And I would like now to travel to Thuringia in Germany. And I am pleased to give the floor to Mrs. Sandra Jolk in the OECD.
Thank you, Margot. Guten Morgen zusammen. Diese Präsentation findet auf Deutsch statt. Ich freue mich sehr, Ihnen heute auch die zentralen Ergebnisse der OECD-Analyse für Thüringen vorstellen zu dürfen. Die Präsentation umfasst 6 Teile.
The presentation has 6 parts.
Go to the overview, Michele. Zunächst ein Überblick über Thüringen.
First of all, an introduction to Thuringia, data for the program, then also the results of the fact-finding mission in Erfurt, an overview of the institutional landscape and the SWOT analysis we did together with the region, and finally key challenges and policy implications. Thüringen is a rural Bundesland in the heart of Germany. You can't find it here on the slide, but Thuringia is famous for its cultural heritage and its history under beyond Germany. Weimar, you might know, is, for example, a place where Goethe and Schiller worked. But I want to introduce some data that you can also find here in the slide. We have a population of 2.1 million inhabitants, which is 2.5% of the whole of Germany. The population density is lower than the German average, and it is receding since 2013. And the growth of GDP is 1%, with 1% a bit lower than the average in Germany. So EU funding in Thuringia, there's a thematic overlap between Thuringia's and Thuringian and EU funding priority, but they don't always match, like programs Horizon Europe. What lacks is the linkage. They don't take direct reference to the programs, and then also the implementation doesn't always match. So that it needs more alignment when it comes to the project and strategic coordination. So funding possibilities are left unused. You see it also on the next slides. Our analysis shows here the participation in EU funds. So the graph shows Thuringia is on the last place in Germany in this LIFE program. It's the 4th last in the Horizon program. Correctly, this means this 0.28% only go to Thuringia, and 1.3% of the German Horizon Europe go to Thuringia. Looking on the right graph, the directly managed programs, you see them here. You see how high is the percentage, the share of Thuringia. We've looked into 3 programs. Next in Europe, this facility about infrastructure, then the LIFE program. If you don't know it, this is about environment and climate change. And Horizon Europe, you might know, it's about research and innovation. And here you say the percentage share of the groups and the volume of funding they get. Horizon Europe, the research area is dominating. We have important research institution, University of Jena and Weimar. And then there's also regional bodies, NGOs and companies are hardly represented. And also funding transnational. It's more equilibrated, more balanced, this share of private and of public stakeholders. What does it mean for Thuringia? There's just a small group that uses the programs of research institutions, but others as municipalities and NGOs. And new, unexperienced applicants are underrepresented. which is difficult for a more broader participation. On the next slide, you see who is involved, the key stakeholders. It's quite diverse, the landscape here in Thuringia. And the stattal chancellery play an important role here, like also the European Information Center and other important bodies, and then also universities, the economy. Even they seem to know each other quite well, but they work a bit isolated. We need an overarching coordination structure. The EU funding ecosystem is much centralized in Erfurt. Last year in November, we went there to Erfurt and did a fact-finding mission there. We met 130 actors. These are ministries, municipalities, universities. And this was a very vivid thematic exchange roundtables with the weaknesses and the strength when it comes to the access to directly manage EU funds. Rural actors, we try to involve them as well, but they have lacking resources and some insecurities. But this feedback was embedded directly into our analysis. And then in May this year, we presented the results together with colleagues of the EU Commission. We showed them in the Thuringian Parliament in Brussels on the invite of the region. 3 points were under focus: how you can link the EU funds with the regional initiatives, and how you can also involve and support less experienced actors. The next slide summarizes the SWOT, the strengths, weaknesses, and threats and opportunities. We have a lot of positive conditions as Thuringia. There's a clear political support from the stattal chancellery. There's an active coordination, regular network meetings and universities, and the civil society show high commitment. And there's a regional EU competence hubs, the EDIH, or the participation in university alliances like Sunrise. Also important, these interfaces to the EU, the TLV-EU and the EIZ that play a strategic role. If we go to the weaknesses, we see that many actors, especially smaller and experienced municipalities, are overwhelmed by all this information. It's not that they don't have information about the directly managed funds, but there's too much information, and it's difficult to see the wood with all these trees. And I then have to filter, what do I need to make a successful EU project? And there's a weak strategic engagement locally. These are additionalities, but they're not really enshrined on local level, which has to do with limited resources, human resources. You need a dedicated person for that. And there is a lack of systematic advisory services, and especially in the rural areas, maybe not everywhere. There's a trust deficit when it comes to these funding institutions, which makes the things more difficult. And then there's a plethora of concrete improvements to simplify the EU programs, make them more targeted, maybe having a regional EU funding roadmap, showing the strategic goals, how can they be linked, the permanent representation of Thuringia, the TVLEU and the EIZ can be used stronger, and there's no access instrument, for example, which could be used even more. And networking through university alliances along the regions could be an important lever. But there's also risks. There's a competition between well-equipped counties and the ones that are less so. Then there's a high co-financing requirements, which especially is a bit difficult for unexperienced actors. And the existing support mechanisms are under pressure due to this financial framework. And the review of the MFF might be a chance for the region, but also a threat, because there are certain insecurities. There's a high pressure on adaptation, and this might also be a threat. Our analysis saw 5 structural challenges for the regions, which are the administrative and the headcount bottlenecks. Many actors on a regional level are really battling with this skills shortage. It's cumbersome to prepare these EU projects. You don't have the resources and the experience in-house. Access is complex and fragmented. Each program has different requirements, which doesn't make things easier. It's not very clear who's your interlocutor, your port of call, where are the interfaces. Then the question about network challenges. EU projects that are successful live from partnerships with other cities or research institutes. In Thuringia, we are well connected, but they need some strategic networks beyond the region, beyond the high school landscape. Then there's a lack of strategic simplification. They're not embedded in the regional planning. And then there's this bias against rural areas. Some rural areas, there's inequalities. It's difficult for them because they have very limited capacities in situ. And as a result, there's a series of political implication. I will tell you what this means in practice. We need a strengthened coordination, using better these regional representations, and then we need dedicated advisory structure that have to be built up. There's a need, the partners before the call. There has to be a simpler access, and there are some ideas like matching platforms. The chambers and the universities could lead a more leading role, and then this cascading funding, this could be broadened still. And last but not least, last point, you need training formats like peer learning in the region that should be fostered so that they can transfer their knowledge and experience and expertise. And I thank you for your attention. And I would give you the opportunities, to thank all the actors in Thuringia for their openness, for their cooperation in this process that has been reflected in this analysis. And we're looking forward to the next steps. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandra, for this presentation. It is now time to hear the reaction of Thuringia. And for this, I would like to give the floor to Dr. Veronika Janssen, Head of the Federal European and International Affairs Department of the State Chancellery of Thuringia.
Ja, ich hoffe, man kann mich hören. Vielen Dank.
Yes, I hope that you can hear me. Thank you very much, Ms. Jolk, for this very detailed and well-fundamented analysis. This report really reflects well our problems, and in a very detailed manner, actually. very, very, very realistic, actually. And it provides us with a very valuable basis in order to reduce barriers when it comes to accessing EU funding, in order to enhance participation and in order to be able to make a more strategic use of EU funding in Thuringia in the future. The political awareness on the relevance of those problems has increased in recent months. Mr. Björnsson and Mr. van den Ede already mentioned that this also has to do with the new EU budget process and with the with less competitiveness concerning EU funds, in order to have a more competitive EU funding allocation. And this makes it necessary even more to improve our regional structures in that respect. And if we continue to be well, we need to improve. That is clear, especially against the background on our own very difficult budget situation. We need to tap EU funds in order to get additional financing, in order not to lose opportunities to, well, do better in our region. And of course, in order to use potential EU partnerships in order to improve the situation in Thuringia. But it is not all about money, or not only about money. It is also about whether Thuringia as a region makes Europe visible in the region in order to provide citizens
Dazu bedarf es konkreter EU-geförderter Projekte im öffentlichen Raum, in den Kommunen
and that
und
EU projects, EU financing makes a difference when it comes to improving especially the situation in rural areas. It must be made clear to our citizens that Europe has a very positive influence on the life of people in Thuringia, with money, but also with creativity and commitment. And what I can confirm that already the fact-finding mission we carried out in Erfurt had a very, very positive repercussion. We had many participants from different areas of Thuringia, of different players, actors, public, private stakeholders. And the echo was really more than we had expected. We had very lively and dynamic discussions, and we got very positive feedback, hearing that participants had the opportunity to talk directly with representatives of the Commission and of the OECD. This was something new in our region, and it was very, very helpful. What became clear during this fact-finding mission, that is something that is detailed in the report as well, and Ms. York also underlined this, the complexity of many EU programs is something that is overwhelming. Many of the smaller municipalities and also to people in public administration do not have a lot of experience with EU programs. So we need to improve a lot in that. Ms. York said it, we have this flooding with information, which information needs to be canalized in a certain way so that even more inexperienced players can participate efficiently. So those were the topics that we found out to be especially important to us. But what needs to be underlined, and that was shown in the fact-finding mission as well, that the potential and the interest in participating in EU funding and programs and projects is existing. But what is lacking is counseling structures and support mechanisms to be able to do so. A positive example from Thuringia, maybe, after the fact-finding mission, the city of Karla and the public transport company in Gera joined forces in order to find financing partners in Brussels, which shows us that the interest is there and that networks can have already existing and can be used in order to join forces to find EU funding. Our first conclusions from the fact-finding missions are the following. We are embarking on that way of trying to use existing structures such as the EU information network that is also funded by the EU Commission. We try to build up competencies, capacities there. Ms. Yolk also said that in Thuringia, we do not have a supra or an umbrella organizational structure. We try to improve strategic networking initiatives, concrete project support with study visits or partnership pairings and mentoring programs, for example. We will develop our structures in a targeted manner. The stakeholder map that is part of the report is a very good basis in order for us in the future to be able to counseling and networking structures in Thuringia. I want to target young people, especially with specific projects, in order to have younger players also participate more in EU programs, especially for more unexperienced users. What is very vital to us is the connection of regional strategies with European programs in order to have the innovation potential in a way that is tailor-made for Thuringia, really. Comparing regional strategies and EU initiatives, which you did with your analysis, Ms. Jörg, shows us where we can get started. Well, that's it for my part. I would like to thank everybody with the EU Commission, with OECD, Ms. Donkers, Mr. Vidal-Bové, and Ms. Vincent. You were always there for us. You always took your time in order to get to our Thuringia representation in Brussels and present this on a European level, also on a parliamentary level. The project is being supported, which is also very important to us as well. We are looking forward to cooperation in the future, to developing the action plan even further, and to open up in a better way European opportunities for the region of Thuringia. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your positive comments, and to remind also that better accessing EU funds is not only about money, but it's also about how to make Europe more visible to citizens and how to enhance their awareness on the opportunity that EU can bring to improve well-being. So again, please make sure to use the chat function to ask your question and comments. We will respond at the end of the event. And now we are going to listen to the presentation of the region of Wallonia, and we're going to do this in French. So I invite you to activate interpretation if needed. Et j'ai le plaisir de donner la parole au coordinateur de ce projet, Michael Vidal-Bover, analyste
the pleasure to give the floor to Michael Vidal-Bover. Thank you, Margot. Thank you to everybody. I'm very happy to introduce this report.
Pour la région wallonne, dans le cadre de ce projet, la structure, elle est la même pour toute la région, vous l'aurez compris dès à présent. Donc on passera en revue un peu une introduction sur la Wallonie, l'usage des fonds dans la région. On parlera un peu de la mission de la fact-finding mission qu'on a eue. Et après, on verra ensemble aussi la carte d'acteurs, le SWOT analysis qu'on a fait et aussi les principaux défis qu'on retrouve dans la région. Mais commençons par quelques repères. La Wallonie représente plus de la moitié du territoire belge, mais seulement 31% de sa population. En 2022, elle ne représentait que presque 23% du PIB total de la Belgique, mais cela dit, la Wallonie bénéficie d'un solide héritage industriel, malgré des restructurations économiques importantes, elles concernent toujours une position compétitive dans plusieurs secteurs industriels clés comme sont la sidérurgie, la construction métallique ou encore, par exemple, la chimie industrielle. Sur le plan stratégique, la région dispose déjà de documents de planification alignés avec les priorités européennes, notamment en matière d'innovation, de durabilité, de santé et de transformation numérique. Mais ces ambitions parfois ne se traduisent pas ou se traduisent de manière inégale dans des dispositifs concrets de mobilisation de fonds européens. La stratégie Wallonie circulaire, par exemple, fait explicitement référence à de nombreux fonds comme le FEDER, comme le Fonds pour une transition juste, comme l'Europe digitale, mais reste limité dans sa capacité à opérationnaliser ses intentions, faute de feuille de route financière claire. La stratégie de spécialisation intelligente est une exception ici. Elle entête déjà de manière explicite les opportunités de financement européen dans ses objectifs, dans ses priorités. Donc, c'est vraiment un exemple à suivre. Il existe donc parfois une certaine hétérogénéité entre les documents stratégiques qu'on a passés en revue. Et en ce qui concerne les données plutôt quantitatives, la performance de la région sur les fonds européens, les données qu'on a, les données qui sont disponibles montrent que, par exemple, les acteurs wallons mobilisent, pardon, ça bouge, ici, mobilisent 73% des financements issus de l'instrument d'investissement interrégional utilisé par la Wallonie et la Flandre, ce qui est une part significative de ce fonds. Mais à l'inverse, la Wallonie ne capte que 19% des fonds Europe Digital. Sur d'autres programmes également, on observe un écart assez notable avec la Flandre, 13% pour Horizon Europe, 21% pour le programme LIFE et 35% pour le Fonds pour l'innovation. Et un autre en particulier a une faible mobilisation par les autorités locales. Elle ne représente que 2% des financements Horizon Europe dans la région et à peine 1% pour le programme LIFE. Et comme beaucoup s'en souviendront, nous avons également mené une mission de terrain à Namur en janvier passé, où nous avons rencontré environ 80 parties prenantes sur 2 jours autour de thématiques telles que la transition verte, la recherche et l'innovation ou encore la santé. Déjà, un grand merci à toutes celles et ceux qui ont participé et qui ont partagé leur expertise parce que effectivement, c'est grâce à ces échanges que nous avons pu produire la carte d'acteurs que vous voyez ici. Cette carte représente l'écosystème wallon des fonds européens. On y retrouve l'administration régionale, mais aussi les points de contact régionaux et nationaux, les autorités locales, les universités et centres de recherche, les entreprises, bien sûr, et aussi les fédérations professionnelles, les acteurs de la santé et l'organisation de la société civile. Donc, comme pour les autres cartographies qu'on a fait, cette cartographie met en lumière cette diversité des acteurs et des rôles, mais elle n'est pas exhaustive, bien sûr. Elle offre déjà un outil qui est précieux, à la fois pour les décideurs publics qui souhaiteraient renforcer la gouvernance des fonds et pour les porteurs de projets potentiels aussi qui cherchent à savoir où se tourner pour trouver de l'accompagnement. Nous avons aussi mené une analyse SWOT pour la Wallonie. Je ne vais pas reprendre tous les éléments, mais je souhaiterais quand même souligner les plus importants à notre avis. Côté point fort, la Wallonie dispose déjà d'un bon écosystème de soutien. On peut citer par exemple WalMeet EU, on peut citer les points de contact nationaux pour Horizon Europe, pour LIFE, pour Digital Europe, ainsi que les cellules Europe qu'on retrouve dans l'administration régionale parfois. Il y a aussi des modèles d'intermédiation adaptés. Les pôles de compétitivité, comme par exemple Wagralim ou Mecatech ou d'autres, mettent en œuvre des appels à projets simplifiés qui facilitent l'accès aux fonds pour les PME, le fameux Cascade Funding dont on a déjà entendu parler. Et il y a aussi des incitations qui existent. Donc, par exemple, le programme Prime Horizon qui propose déjà jusqu'à 25 000 euros pour soutenir la coordination de projets Horizon Europe. Donc, il y a des points forts déjà, mais il existe aussi des faiblesses. On sait que certains acteurs ne connaissent pas suffisamment les points de contact nationaux ou WalMeet EU, ou ne savent pas comment y accéder, quelles sont leurs tâches, etc. Les canaux de communication sont encore trop fragmentés et descendants, parfois top-down. La dépendance à quelques personnes clés rend l'écosystème assez vulnérable, puisque en cas de départ de ces personnes qui sont motivées, les connaissances sont souvent perdues. Et finalement, il y a aussi une question qui est la barrière linguistique, qui constitue un frein réel pour la participation à certains programmes européens. On a aussi entendu quelques opportunités, comme par exemple renforcer le mandat et la visibilité de cet acteur qui est relativement nouveau, Wallonia, qui permettrait donc d'en faire un véritable hub de coordination entre programmes. Aussi, faciliter le retour d'expériences structurées qui pourraient améliorer les futures démarches de financement. Et enfin, des dispositifs comme le label Mission de l'Union européenne, EU Mission, qui pourraient aussi appuyer des projets de qualité actuellement non financés. Tout ça, c'est des opportunités, mais il y a aussi quelques menaces à garder à l'esprit. L'absence d'investissement systématique dans la formation, dans le capacity building, risque de maintenir un accès qui est inégal au fonds entre les parties prenantes. La concurrence croissante, dont on a déjà aussi parlé, pour les financements européens pourrait désavantager les acteurs qui sont moins utilisés. Et le recours à des subventions régionales, donc tout le système de subventions régionales qui sont parfois plus simples, peut aussi décourager la mobilisation de fonds européens. Et donc, à partir de ce diagnostic, nous avons identifié 5 grands défis, comme nous l'avons fait pour les autres régions. Pour la Wallonie, le premier concerne ces lacunes en matière d'information de communication, puisque l'accès à l'information reste inégal, surtout en particulier pour les petites communes et les ONG. Les structures de soutien existantes manquent aussi de visibilité, on l'a dit déjà. Parfois, leur rôle reste un peu flou vis-à-vis les potentiels bénéficiaires. Et enfin, il existe peu de mécanismes pour diffuser de bonnes pratiques. Deuxième défi, c'est aussi les limites de la capacité administrative et la complexité technique. On a déjà entendu aussi, mais les procédures européennes sont perçues souvent comme étant complexes et parfois les ressources humaines pour y faire face ne sont pas suffisantes. Les barrières linguistiques, on l'a dit déjà, et aussi la formation des consortiums qui seraient solides représente également un obstacle parce que ça demande beaucoup de temps et surtout pour les nouveaux entrants, c'est un obstacle qu'on a entendu fréquemment. Troisième point, c'est les contraintes financières, donc le besoin de cofinancement, l'absence de préfinancement et aussi la rigidité de certains outils financiers sont des freins majeurs, notamment pour les petits porteurs de projets. Et de plus, l'articulation entre les fonds européens et les instruments régionaux, comme je le disais tout à l'heure, reste complexe puisque c'est très rigide et ça complique un peu le montage financier des projets européens. Quatrième défi, c'est la fragmentation au sein des structures régionales. Nous le savons, il n'existe pas de mécanisme centralisé pour coordonner tout ce qui est la gouvernance de fonds européens de manière transversale. Euh, Ça, c'est peut-être pas un problème, mais il faut le compenser avec des mécanismes de coordination qui marchent. Parce que souvent, ce qu'on a vu, c'est que les administrations régionales travaillent en silo, avec peu de coopération horizontale et donc, ou même aussi de liens avec les collectivités locales. Donc, cela peut engendrer des doublons et il faut essayer de l'éviter. Et enfin, le cinquième défi, donc, c'est l'absence d'une planification stratégique à long terme stable sur les fonds européens, puisque bien que certaines initiatives existent, elles ne s'inscrivent pas dans une logique ou dans une stratégie institutionnalisée qui relierait les priorités régionales avec les opportunités européennes existantes. Cela donc limite à la capacité de la région à anticiper, à influencer et aussi à profiter pleinement des évolutions du financement européen qu'on sait est en train de changer significativement ces derniers mois. Et à partir de ce diagnostic, plusieurs pistes d'action préliminaires commencent à émerger. Elles seront bien sûr discutées avec la région et affinées avec elle. Mais parmi les implications politiques qu'on voit possibles, c'est un peu améliorer la coordination entre ces points de contact, dans les points de contact nationaux, Wallonie, EU, les départements du SPV. fournir donc un instrument de coordination entre ces points, mener une évaluation structurée des dispositifs d'appui existants pour identifier donc ce qui fonctionne et ce qui ne fonctionne pas aussi bien et où des ajustements sont nécessaires, développer des dispositifs régionaux de préfinancement et de cofinancement qui seraient plus prévisibles, notamment pour soutenir les acteurs qui sont plus petits ou qui n'ont pas d'expérience avec les fonds européens. Et par exemple, aussi, tirer parti d'initiatives comme celle que j'ai évoquée tout à l'heure, le label Mission de l'Union européenne, EU Mission, pour soutenir donc les projets qui n'ont pas reçu de financement, mais qui ont reçu quand même la certification comme étant un projet qui devrait obtenir financement s'il y en avait. Donc, comme indiqué, et comme je l'indiquerai aussi plus tard, nous reviendrons à Namur et à toute la région d'ailleurs d'ici la fin de l'année pour discuter ensemble des recommandations les plus pertinentes, mais aussi pour co-construire les actions concrètes à mettre en œuvre afin que ce diagnostic et aussi les recommandations ne s'arrêtent pas là, donc qu'il y ait des actions mises en œuvre. Mais pour l'instant, je me réjouis d'entendre les réactions de la région et pour ça, Margot, je te rends la parole.
Merci beaucoup pour cette présentation très claire et en français, Mickaël. Je vais désormais donner la parole à la région elle-même pour réagir à cette présentation avec Monsieur Luc Pack, inspecteur général au sein du département de l'Union européenne, des affaires multilatérales et de la francophonie de Wallonie-Bruxelles International. Monsieur Pack, nous vous écoutons.
Thank you very much, Margot. Good morning, everybody. Bonjour, goedemorgen. Goedemorgen, dzień dobry à tous nos collègues. Et tout d'abord, merci beaucoup à Mickaël pour votre présentation en français. C'est une manière très, très courtoise et je vous en remercie vraiment d'avoir mené cette présentation dans notre langue d'usage. Et donc, je voudrais bien entendu, avant toute chose, aussi remercier la Commission européenne et les équipes de l'OCDE pour le rapport qui est évidemment le résultat d'un travail et un travail de très haute qualité. Donc, il a été le résultat évidemment d'une coopération très, très rapprochée avec nos services et consultation avec les différentes parties prenantes au niveau de la région wallonne. Mickaël, vous avez parlé de la barrière linguistique et je vais poursuivre en anglais. Comme ça, ce sera peut-être plus facile pour la compréhension de toutes et tous. So 2 weeks ago, the Walloon government published its international policy note. And in fact, this note states that in the context of the geopolitical tensions, the relationship with the European Union takes a central position in our policy. And the government wishes to optimize the participation of our field actors in the European Union programs. And to achieve this objective, it is therefore necessary for us to understand what are the barriers, and Mickaël, you mentioned them in your presentation, that prevent the Walloon actors from turning more towards European level. It's undeniable that we can perform better, of course, when we compare to regions like Wallonia. And so the OECD team's report is a result of a thorough analysis. And first, I would consider the positive points it highlights. So the very real existence and optimal functioning of support structures in the ecosystem of Wallonia. There are many, as you mentioned it, and we have neither more nor less support than other regions that are very efficient. Of course, ways for improvement must therefore be sought elsewhere. And it appears from the exchanges we had in January 2025 that many actors are suffering from a lack of administrative capacity. Drafting a European project, requires time, knowledge of the European Union strategies, and an ability to manage, implement, and ensure follow-up. The reason I insist on this element is that it highlights the need for support, as well as the importance of the Commission's attention to this element. Another aspect is the necessity of aligning the policies of the region with European policies. And without any doubt, the European semester is a guide that directs the territories in this direction. However, there is still some way to go. Coordination between administration and operators is crucial. It is essential that it's even optimal. And as you also mentioned, there are many different stakeholders, as you showed in your presentation in Wallonia. And we also believe that establishing a culture of evaluation is essential. Knowing who submits projects and who does not is crucial to monitoring improved access to European funding and understanding the rise of our actors in European programs. The exercise is something Walmeet. We spoke a lot about Walmeet during our contacts in January, and you also clearly mentioned it in your presentation, and it's also clearly mentioned in the international policy note of our two governments. And so Walmeet regularly engage in this monitoring and information. But it's still imperfect. The data that is published, particularly on the Commission's dashboards, is not always accessible equally based on proposed programs. Furthermore, they fail to provide any information about failures, particularly the causes behind these failures. In order to improve the situation, the information, of course, is essential. As a conclusion, to sum up, the actions to be implemented are on the side as much of the region as of the Commission. Of course, we will start with the action that we, the Walloon region, can implement. And as shown on the presentation, the 5 challenges we are facing will be very useful guidelines to act and to perform better in the next future. I thank you all for your kind attention and also for the excellent analysis and report made by the different teams. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Pack, pour votre réaction sur, sur le chapitre ainsi que pour ces pistes très éclairantes. Merci pour votre précieuse coopération également dans cette analyse, et d'avoir rappelé la nécessité d'aligner certaines politiques régionales avec le niveau européen, l'importance de la coordination et de l'information, ce qui est bien sûr clé. I would like now to switch to English to remind the audience that you can ask your questions and make comments in the chat. Thank you very much to all presenters and region for all the work done. It is clear that the analysis we heard have required intense effort to get them right. So thanks very much for this. We also heard that some regions face shared challenges. So on this topic, I would like to give back the floor to the coordinator of the project, Mr. Michael Vidal-Bover.
Thank you, Margot. Just a second that I share my screen. Yes, thank you. So let me perhaps just very quickly take a step back and share some reflections that go just beyond the case of one individual region. I mean, well, we've seen it. Well, each region clearly has its own institutional setup, its administrative structure, and its experience with EU funding. Some common challenges have emerged, and we have counted 12 in total at the OECD. So these challenges that you can see now on this slide, these challenges fall into 4 broad areas that are arguably intertwined. So capacity, financial constraints, engagement, and also coordination. Let me go one by one. So first, on capacity, we have challenges 1, 2, 3. So across the regions, support structures do exist, but they often remain poorly visible or they are hard to use. Information is sometimes scattered, access is not necessarily the most intuitive, and newcomers often complain and struggle to find their way through the system. Challenge 2, so we also see that administrative capacities are often limited, they are unevenly distributed and vulnerable to staff turnover. And on top of that, challenge 3, procedural complexity. We've heard about this as well. It's really complex sometimes to access the specifics of EU funds, so it remains a key issue, especially for small organizations or potential new entrants with no experience on the ground. Second, we also identify financial challenges, so challenges 4 to 6. Challenge 4, as it says, many coordination bodies at the regional level that are meant to support EU and fund mobilization are often under-resourced. And so they often lack the staff, but also perhaps the funding or the authority or the mandate needed to support applicants effectively. There are also issues sometimes with co-financing and pre-financing, as said in Challenge 5. High co-financing requirements and delays in regional contributions can prevent even approved projects from moving forward. And in some cases, Challenge 6, we see a perverse effect where simpler regional grants disincentivize actors from pursuing more complex but potentially more strategic EU funding. Now, third, there are also engagement challenges. A clear pattern emerges. Participation is often concentrated among a few experienced players. Many smaller actors, especially local governments, some SMEs, and also civil society organizations lack the information, the support, or even sometimes the confidence to get involved. This leads to unequal access, we've said that, and also missed opportunities. Another gap in Challenge 7 lies in peer learning. So the regions often lack structured platforms for knowledge exchange, meaning that good practices are not systematically shared from successful, so lessons from successful projects remain quite isolated overall. And in addition, Challenge 8, limited participation in EU-level networking initiatives means that some regions miss out on forming consortia early or on aligning with upcoming EU funding priorities in time. And finally, on coordination and perhaps also leadership. In many cases, we know that governance is fragmented. The responsibilities are often dispersed across institutions, and this poses a problem for strategic coordination. So it can basically end up in duplication and reduced impact. Also, we know that the some regional strategies also sometimes fail to clearly link with EU funding opportunities, which makes it very difficult to plan in advance, as Challenge 11 says. And lastly, Challenge 12, we find that in several cases, political leadership, so political will, does not prioritize the mobilization of EU funds. And when that happens, that is difficult. So support structures lack the mandate and momentum to engage strategically and invest in long-term project development. Although I have to say that for the 4 regions here, we see quite a big support from the political leadership. Now, these challenges, of course, will not apply equally everywhere. We've seen the individual cases already, but they do reflect, I think, a common landscape and a shared need for more strategic, more coordinated, and also inclusive approaches to EU fund mobilization across these regions. And it's precisely this shared learning that this project aims to foster in the second phase, in its second phase. So the question you may ask me is, what now? What happens next? So as you know, this is the timeline for our project. We are here like in June 2025. What next? Well, over the coming months, the OECD will be working on a recommendations report that puts forward concrete options for overcoming the specific challenges identified in each region. But of course, this will not be done in isolation. In fact, on the contrary, the draft recommendations will be developed in close collaboration, not only with the regional authorities, but also with local stakeholders. Because between September and December this year, the OECD will return to each of the 4 regions to hold practical workshops. And during these sessions, we will test the ground for these proposed recommendations. We will discuss what's feasible, what's not, what's relevant, what's not. And we will co-create with the participants a strategic action plan and an implementation roadmap. And these tools will lay out what needs to happen, how and in what sequence. And so altogether, this next phase of the project will lead to 3 key deliverables: a tailored recommendations report for each region, and a strategic action plan, and an implementation roadmap. And these will be presented in a virtual event, similar to today, basically, in February 2026. So what we've seen today is only one part of the project, an important part of the project, but the next phase is perhaps even more exciting, because now that we clearly understand and identify the challenges, we can finally start building the path to really address them. And that is what we will seek to do together with you. I hope I was clear. Thank you for your attention, and over to you, Margot.
Thank you very much, Michael. You were totally clear. And with this, we can close the set of presentation for today's event. And before we open for the Q&A, I would like to ask for a reaction from the 3 countries that benefit from the observer status in this project: Bosnia and Herzegovina, Kosovo, and Moldova. So if you wish to speak, please raise your hand and I will give you the floor. I do not see any hand raise.
I believe maybe from Moldova, we have Ms. Juliana Mirzak. You could, yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Miguel. So good morning, everyone, to all participants. It is a real pleasure to be present today at the launch of analytical report of the TSI project. Congratulations for the made productive teamwork and for very useful information shared with Moldova. From Moldova's side, I would like to present some of challenges which Moldova also faces in EU fund successions, which we hope can serve as a comparative analysis to the topic of the project. Just some of them. According to the roadmap of public administration reform, a benchmark indexation process of the Republic of Moldova to the European Union, State Chancellery is to develop by December 2025 gap analysis with the presentation of recommendations on changes to the institutional framework necessary for efficient management of EU funds. I will highlight the main challenges. Moldova has a limited system on financial management and control for EU funds, with the exception of the regulations on the implementation of EU-funded cross-border, transnational and interregional cooperation programs. Moldova does not have an audit structure specialized in auditing European funds, which is a requirement for alignment with the EU acquis. The Card of Accounts of the Republic of Moldova has participated in audits for cross-border, transnational and interregional cooperation programs, but it does not have sufficient research and specialized training to fulfill the complex role of auditing European funds according to EU standards. Also, considering the structured and rigorous nature of the EU funding mechanism, Moldova needs a clear delimitation of responsibilities and roles at different levels of governance and sectors, including the creation of specialized units or structures with the necessary expertise and authority to effectively supervise, manage, and audit EU funds. In addition to the systematic gaps listed, our incipient report also identifies a number of operational obstacles which influence the development and implementation of EU funds management mechanisms as following. Insufficient administrative capacity and shortage of specialized expertise due to the low number of specialists of expertise in key areas like public procurement according to EU standards, financial management, auditing, due also to high turnover of employees and limited training capacity of specialists. Also, weakness in the field of information systems, which aren't adapted to the specific requirements of indirect EU funds management, the instability of the regulatory and institutional framework, resulting from frequent changes in legislation, institutional reorganizations, and fluctuations in government policies. And also one of them, not the least, reduced absorption capacity in the level of potential beneficiaries, especially among local public authorities and civil society organizations, which do not have sufficient technical training, experience to effectively apply to EU-funded projects. So, in conclusion, Presenting all these challenges, we hope that we can extend the picture on the issue of a project. We keep our high interest in developing the activities of a project and to continue our participation. Thank you for attention.
Thank you very much to Moldova and to observer countries. Your involvement is also very important for the project. And now it's time to respond to the question of the audience that we have been receiving during the presentation in the chat, and any that you may also have now. So I can see one question in the chat from Tanguy from the Brussels region about the best practice that we could have on one region. So what are the best practices that you have identified that one region could copy related to the challenges mentioned, and especially on capacity and budget procedures? So for this, I will give the floor to Sandra Jolk from the OECD.
Yes, thank you very much. Great question. Also a very difficult one. If we had a silver bullet answer to that one, I think we would help not only Brussels but all the regions. But let me try to give it some thought and some analysis. Yes, so on administrative capacity and how to respond to that challenge, and also to the fragmented budget procedures, I think one line that could be taken that we've seen in some French regions is to have shared expertise platforms. So to have really a centralized cross-sector team that supports local and regional stakeholders with EU fund applications. And that's something we've taken up as a preliminary policy implication for the recommendations report for a few of the regions as well. Another avenue could be to have so-called talent pools or flexible staffing. So to have a pool of pre-qualified experts that are available to work on demand. And I think what goes a little bit in this direction already is what Brussels is doing with the framework agreement on EU funds. If you're not familiar with that one, maybe someone from the region can also elaborate on that. But the idea is basically with the framework agreement, the administrations in Brussels are able to hire external consultants to work on EU fund applications with them. And I'm highlighting the word with them because the idea is really that this is not just outsourcing of the work, but also building internal capacity through the help of these external experts. The issue of budgetary and procedural streamlining is a bit more tricky because it depends a lot also on regional funding rules and things that differ from one region to the other. I think for Brussels specifically, having a new government will already help quite a bit. Then perhaps also the pre-identification of pipeline projects could be useful. So to really early stage filter and prioritize projects based on the strategic fit, and then also to think, for example, of a pre-financing fund. So that there is money available for people to cover all the pre-financing costs that you sometimes can get back later in EU projects. And I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandra, for answering to this difficult question. I will now pass the floor to Mikel. I think we have a question from Wallonia.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Thank you very much, Margot and colleagues. First of all, I wanted to make a precision regarding my presentation for Wallonia. In French, I said inégalité, so inequality, not illégalité. Illegality. So please, there's no illegal things going on here. So just for the note. And then, yes, we received a comment on an issue called the double funding or the double financement. This issue basically this term basically refers to the phenomenon that may happen when you have regional subsidies that are targeting specific areas that could potentially be financed by EU funds. So of course, no envelope of funds is unlimited. But if you have only a pot of money and you have to distribute it, you may want to first have a clear view of the regional subsidies that you have, what is exactly where you're putting the money regionally, and then see what the EU offers and whether there are any overlaps there. And so this is basically a way to be more strategic with whether you use the regional funding sources entirely sometimes, or if you devote resources to going to Europe and to spending time and resources to get the EU funding, or to at least apply for EU funding. So we heard from the mission, not only in Wallonia, by the way, we heard about this also in other regions where, you know, there is no clear idea about the numerous subsidies that are given by the region and how they align with the EU priorities and budgets and for each program. So I think that is an issue. So basically doing an audit about what exists, how it links to the EU funding opportunities available, we think would be a nice preliminary step to take. Thank you. Back to you, Margot.
Thank you very much, Michael. So we have some time left. Fortunately, we have some question in the chat, questions from Thuringia. So as EU research funding specialist at the university, I'd like to know, considering the increasing emphasis on cross-border and transnational cooperation in EU funding programs, what mechanism does the OECD propose to support smaller regional actors like Fachhochschulen? I apologize for the pronunciation, but like what mechanism does the OECD propose to support smaller regional actors in forming effective consortia with partners from other member states?
I'm happy to answer that, Margot, if I may.
Excellent.
So here well, thank you first of all for the very good question, and it's a bit of a chicken and egg question that we discussed intensively during the mission in Erfurt as well, because for a lot of these projects you need networks and partnerships, but if you don't have them, it's very difficult to get them in time, and often you only have 3-4 months to apply for an e-project under direct management, and if you don't have that network already in place, it's very difficult to do that during this very limited time frame. So it's a very, very relevant question. I think some regions, what works, some regions have established EU cooperation hubs or matchmaking platforms that actively connect smaller research institutions with potential partners in other EU regions. And that was also one of the solutions we discussed in Erfurt, this idea of matchmaking that can happen either physically or perhaps also digitally today. So there could be some early on scouting, matchmaking, and consortia building, not just targeted towards one project, but that can be used across various projects. Some regions also provide so-called micro grants or preparation vouchers that also cover travel costs, proposal writing, because the problem is also that if you want to build networks, you need to go see colleagues in other regions, and this is often difficult to finance if you don't tie it to a specific project. So to get some funding from the region to do that could be helpful to lower the barrier to entry for smaller actors. And then a third solution is to embed smaller actors or more inexperienced actors, maybe also with the support of the region, better into existing networks, because there are a lot of thematic alliances or platforms already existing in the European landscape, like the European Regions Research and Innovation Network, for example, the Interact Knowledge platforms. So to better hook up individual actors into these platforms could also make the partner search much easier. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandra. One last question in the chat from Lazar from the Ministry of Cohesion and Regional Development in Slovenia. Question regarding the Thuringia region. So we can see that one of the main challenge is a weak political support and absence of political will. So the question is what mechanism or strategy they use in this region to provide political support and redirect political will in that direction. Perhaps Sandra, you would like to
or maybe even the region actually, because we have them here as well. Maybe Veronica or Anli could offer some guidance on how this how you did that. Interpretation, ja.
Ja, wenn ich kurz was dazu sagen soll. Bei uns ist das auch Work in Progress. Ne? Also, und ich muss sagen, diese Fact-Finding-Mission und insbesondere auch das Engagement, was direkt auch in Thüringen ankam, bei uns hat sehr viel geholfen. Uns auch sehr geholfen, unserer Hausleitung in der Staatskanzlei und auch unseren unseren Parlamentariern die Bedeutung dieses Projekts eben zu vermitteln. Und ich denke, bei uns sind da inzwischen auch alle an Bord. Auch natürlich, dass in Brüssel nochmal die Parlamentarier einbezogen wurden, hat für den politischen Support bei uns auch sehr viel gebracht. Also ich habe schon den Eindruck, dass bei uns auf allen Ebenen ein starker Wille da ist, diese Geschichte zu unterstützen und die Strukturen zu verbessern. Aber natürlich ist das bei uns auch noch, ja, alles im Fluss und ja, aber wir sind da auf einem guten Weg. Man muss alle einbeziehen, man muss alle ansprechen und man muss auch konkret werden. Man muss vor allen Dingen ganz konkret sagen, was man sich vorstellen kann, dass man braucht, um einfach irgendwo einen Ansatzpunkt zu haben, wo die Politik oder wo eben auch wo die politische Leitung eben auch sagen kann, okay, ihr seid jetzt an dem Punkt X, ihr habt jetzt die Analyse, ihr habt jetzt einiges da an Problemen auch analysiert und wir müssen jetzt eben ganz konkret gucken, was kann man machen. Es ist ein fortlaufender Prozess auch bei uns noch.
Vielleicht darf ich auch noch kurz anschließen an die Frage zum Netzwerken. Es ist ja in der Tat so, dass es bereits verschiedene sag ich mal, Initiativen gibt. Also wir sind zum Beispiel auch als Landesvertretung Thüringen
different initiatives. We as the representation of Thuringia are part of the European Regions Research and Innovation Network. So we are members of that network. It is financed by the State Chancellery of Thuringia. It is open for all players within Thuringia to become active. This is to have regions join forces who want to build up consortia in that area. So please approach us, please get into contact with us. We have good networks here in Brussels with different European regions, with the regional offices, and we can also help you in getting information on where our opportunities or chances in order to be active in partner consortia. Every year we organize a cities workshop or municipalities workshop where we also where we try to solve problems encountered in the different municipalities and cities, and even those universities of applied sciences are very welcome to participate in that area. So we already have quite some opportunities that are existing and within the framework of this project, and also looking into the future, we need to really reinforce existing partnerships also with our partner regions, Odeponce or Manopolska, in order to reinforce those partnerships, make them more visible within the region of Thuringia, in order to be able to form project consortia. So please get into contact with us, ask us, send us a mail in order to find a common way to move forward.
Thank you very much for these two answers from the region. We have two additional questions in the chat. One from the National Contact Point for Horizon Europe and Digital Europe in the Brussels Capital Region, and another one, and I will let Michael respond to the two questions.
Yeah, no, I'm really sorry. We're conscious of time, so I'll be very brief. For these questions sent by the National Contact Point for Horizon Europe and Digital Europe in the Brussels Capital Region. So the issue of as you call it, overscription rate of many programs. Yes, we know, and we heard during the missions that this is the case. So many people apply, often very good applications, but then they don't secure funding because there's only a limited pool of funds available for each call. We know that, we reflected that in the report, and we have talked, for example, of thinking about these labels, this labeling system that at least they give you a certificate that you've gone through the process. You at least have this label that can help you or could help you get other sources of financing from other places, be it the region, also be it other programs at the EU level. That is one question. I would go more in depth, but I'm mindful of time. And then is there a report available on basically good practices on this? So the recommendations report that we will be developing as part of the next steps will include best practices. So we will try to provide some snapshots of what works best in several cases. You mentioned the case of Spain, I think, if I'm not mistaken, or someone did. And yes, we know that Spain, Italy, Portugal are countries that invest a lot in having the necessary infrastructure to access these EU funds. So we will be sure to have a look and to share the lessons that are useful for our project. I also see some messages from Spain. Unfortunately, I can't go in depth, but I'm really happy that countries that are not in this project, so Spain, Slovenia, Moldova as well, are here today to share to basically reflect with us and to be here to participate in this meeting. So thanks very much, and I will come back to you, Luisa Garcia, on this question. Thank you. Maybe now it's time to wrap up, isn't it, Margot?
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you very much to all participants for your insightful question participation. I'm afraid indeed that it's all the time that we have. We will share the link of the record of the meeting with the regions. If you have any question, please feel free to contact the OECD via Michael, coordinator of the project, or via the counterpart for your region, and we will get back to you. To close what has been an enriching event, I would like to give the floor back to the European Commission, to Mrs. Nicole Dunkers, Policy Officer of the SG Reform of the European Commission.
Yeah, I'm there. Thank you. Thank you for the possibility to do some words here today. I'm a little bit flabbergasted. So many people and so many great things that have been discussed today, but I'd like to add a couple of things that from my perspective could be important as well. Well, much has been said. It's really coming through. So the urgency and the importance of this timely project. It tackles a central challenge. I really think it's a central common challenge, improving the accessibility and the effective absorption of the EU funds. We know these EU funds are there, where they're often locked behind fragmented instruments and complex procedures, or even perceived to be. It doesn't always have to be, but they're perceived to be. And it's not an abstract issue. That's what we've seen in the last couple of months with this project, but also with the TSI of other projects that are really also coming in on this topic. It's a daily challenge, especially for the EU regions and for the municipalities who need these resources the most. And we've heard that the regions saying this today again. I want to echo the voices of the speakers today because they rightly emphasize how vital this initiative is, not just in theory, but also in practice. And it's how it's essential to having ongoing work on this. I would also like to echo my colleague, Kjartan Björnsson, with that we must take the right lessons from the current multi-financial framework and the Recovery and Resilience Facility to bring this into the new MFF, which is being developed as we speak, and as we heard also, which will be presented on the 16th of July this next month. The message is simple. investments alone are not enough. Reforms must go hand in hand, and the support, the technical support behind this is also something that will still be very, very relevant. This is, so as he also said, Kjartan, it's the hardware and the software that come together, and you need both. And additionally, I think we also have to be aware the citizens, SMEs, and NGOs are expecting this from us just right now, because something that we saw in the last Eurobarometer was that the trust in government is growing. It's quite visible. They're looking for tangible results on the ground, but this also means that we need to use the private and public investments in a better way to get reforms and on EU priorities off the ground. So it's about proactiveness, it's about forward looking, and it's about being strategic. I'm not going to take too much time because I know we're almost there, or we're actually over 12. Sorry, Mikael. But I really need to say this as well. I'm very much looking forward to the capacity building events that are coming up in this project. It's practice what you preach. It's not the technical sessions, but we're really making the change being happened. I'm already seeing this in this project. We're already changing during the project. We're already trying to find as much commitment as possible. So a big thank you to the 4 regions. Thank you also very much for the nice words concerning the TSI. And also a warm thank you to the OECD for their excellent work. I'm not going to name you all because I know I'll probably forget somebody, but your analysis has not only identified the challenges, but also shown what we can do, the policy implications and the recommendations, and the governance tools that we need to move forward on. I want to thank the enlargement countries for being here, to joining here, and also I want to thank my Commission colleagues that have been working in the background, and you don't always see them, but they're there, and thank you very much. And last but not least, I want to thank all the participants today. So we had some really, really nice questions already. I think there are many more. Like Mikael said, we are seeing many countries being involved in this project. They're very interested. If you look at LinkedIn, how many likes you guys get, it's incredible. It really means that it's alive, and it's essential. It's important because this is about not only about the technical side of it, it's really about getting Europe to go forward. And I also heard from Gert saying, you know, guys, we really need to look at the new MFF. What does that mean? I'm also hearing Veronica saying we need to have political commitment. So we are already seeing the region saying that please use, you know, we have to do this better. So bring the messages that we're hearing here today forward, and thank you very much for being able to say something. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your concluding remarks, Mrs. Donkers, and to underline the importance of this work that has been done today, as well as to remind the forthcoming capacity building event that will occur in the course of the project. And lastly, I would like to give the floor to OECD, to Mrs. Isabelle Chatry, Head of the Decentralization, National Finance and Infrastructure Unit, for her concluding remarks.
Thank you very much, Margot, and thank you as well, Nicole, for your thoughtful concluding remarks. So we have taken careful note today of your comments. For example, the Brussels paradox, with a region that doesn't always make the most of its strategic position as the seat of the EU. It was good to hear about Optiris objectives to improve coordination. This is key. It is also important to consider capacity as an investment rather than a cost, and then to scale up in terms of skills and strategic capacities. A challenge which was also mentioned during the Q&A session, the capacity, which highlighted the need to share good practices in this area. In Silesia, it was noted that NGOs and SMEs are not making the most of the existing EU funds. There is a lack of knowledge and significant financial and regulatory barriers. In response, there is a significant opportunity for cascade funding, particularly for smaller organizations and for improving partnerships. Finally, the special challenges faced by rural areas were highlighted. Awareness of the importance of EU fundings in Thuringia has increased, but many potential beneficiaries, especially in rural areas, find the complexity of EU funds overwhelming, and the flood of information doesn't help. So it was recalled that all this is not just about money, but also about partnerships, about raising the region's profile in Europe, as well as about demonstrating the added value of Europe in the region. More advice and support mechanisms are needed, and we were pleased to hear that the City of Calais and the public transport company has joined forces to find EU funding. Regional but also international networks already exist. Now it's the time to expand and make better use of them. Finally, in Wallonia, we were happy to hear that the international policy note has been published, highlighting the importance of EU funds. And with regard to the challenges, a need for better coordination and increased administrative capacity was mentioned. There was also a call for strategies and opportunities to be better aligned and for a culture of monitoring and evaluation to be improved. From this perspective, it is also crucial to learn from failures, but we lack information on this. So the OECD now will prepare recommendations and will soon return to your regions for the second phase of the project, where we work together to co-develop a strategic action plan and an implementation roadmap tailored to each region's needs. Again, I would like to thank our regional partners for their cooperation throughout this fruitful journey. Your interest and engagement are essential to making the most of this project, and we truly appreciate your commitment. I would like to warmly thank the European Commission, Katjan, Nicole, and Cathy for their support and trust, as well as our observer countries, Moldova today, for joining us in this meeting. And of course, many thanks to the OECD team, Michael, Sandra, Olivia, Margot, and Charlotte for their hard work. And a big thanks you as well to all the participants who connected today from other European countries and of course from the regions, and contributed to our work, as well as the people who shared their insight during the fact-finding missions. As Michael mentioned, your continued engagement will be key, and we are very much looking forward to continuing this collaboration with you. So thank you again, and have a nice afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Isabelle. Thanks very much, everyone, for joining and contributing to this enriching and fruitful event. Merci, and on behalf of OECD team, I wish you a very nice afternoon.